All right, let's move on to Jim Jordan's line of questioning. He actually talks about the lab leak and Fauci's covering up of the lab leak. Watch this.
Doctor, why was it so important that the virus not have started in a lab?
We don't know where it started, and that's the reason why I keep an open mind. So I don't know what you mean by why was it so important. It wasn't important.
Well, you still don't know where it started? The guys you gave money to figured it out in 3 days.
No.
Mr. Anderson said on January 31st, 2020, virus looks engineered, virus not consistent with evolutionary theory. The very next day, Dr. Gary said, I don't know how this happens in nature. It'd be easy to do in a lab. And then 3 days later, Shazam, they switch and say it has to be nature. So they figured it out in 3 days, but you still don't know?
No, in fact, if you look at what they were saying, Congressman Jordan, they were saying that it was not a manufactured virus. It still could have evolved out of a lab.
Well, let me read something here to you.
They're not incompatible.
In our study on the censorship of the Biden administration working with big tech, I want to read you a WhatsApp message from Mark Zuckerberg. Can we include that the White House put pressure on us to censor the lab leak theory? So this is a communication on July 16th, 2021. Nick Clegg, Joel Kaplan, Sheryl Sandberg, Mark Zuckerberg. They're certainly feeling the pressure to downplay any lab leak theory and go with the natural origin theory.
Is there a question there?
One's coming. Here's another email to Mark Zuckerberg. It says, subject line, COVID misinformation, Wuhan lab leak theory. In response to continued public pressure and tense conversations with the new administration, we started removing 5 COVID claims, including the lab leak theory. Mr. Zuckerberg responds, this seems like a good reminder that when we compromise our standards due to pressure from an administration in either direction, we often later regret it. Why was it so important the virus not have started in a lab?
Wasn't so important that the virus not. We don't know. We know
it was important to someone in the Biden administration, so much so that the top people at Meta, the top people at Facebook are asking, why are we getting all this pressure to downplay the lab leak theory? And we have an email from June of the same year, June 4th, 2021, saying the same thing. It was certainly important to somebody.
Well, what has that got to do with me?
I'm asking you because you're the expert on the coronavirus. I'm saying, why was the administration so pushing not to have the lab leak theory as something that was viable?
I can answer that. I've kept an open mind throughout the entire process.
You kept an open mind, Dr. Fauci, open mind.
That is correct.
Okay. Just absolutely ridiculous for a couple of things. First of all, he did not keep an open mind. He was definitely one of the people that was going around trying to kill the lab leak story. That is now well documented. There have been numerous stories around that have been reported on with evidence of Fauci intervening, saying we've got to kill this story. Who are these quacks that are spreading the lab leak theory? He went and pressured the scientists who were saying this kind of looks like it came from a lab. It doesn't look like it came from nature. He did kind of a catch and kill of that story. This is one of the most comical parts of the testimony, him trying to say, I kept an open mind about the lab leak. Meanwhile, he was going around notoriously covering that up. And then Jim Jordan asks a really great question that I think a lot of us should wonder about, which is, why was killing the lab leak story so important? What was so wrong with the lab leak theory? And I don't know if we've really gotten a clear answer on that other than protecting the labs. I mean, that would be right. That would be Anthony Fauci's. The obvious answer would be, well, we didn't want people to find out that these labs screw up like this because then they might shut down the labs. And that's bad for us scientists because we like to go and do a bunch of experiments on labs, like having, flesh-eating flies eating beagle dogs, right? We got to keep that stuff going on. So Fauci then also goes on to say that he never deleted any email, that he never used private email. Watch this one.
Did you ever delete an official record?
No.
Dr. Fauci, did you ever conduct official business via email?
To the best of my recollection and knowledge, I have never conducted official business via my private email.
Okay. I just want to read this particular email that was actually dug up in one of those FOIAs. And this was from David Marins to Peter Daszak, who said, and the subject was Zoom meeting with Tony tomorrow. This was April 21st of 2021. And he says, P.S. I forgot to say there's no worry about FOIAs. I can either send stuff to Tony on his private Gmail or hand it to him at work or at his house. He's too smart to let colleagues send him stuff that could cause trouble. But there he is saying, I never use my private email, never. But we have also a mountain of evidence of people pointing to using Anthony Fauci's private email so that they could avoid Freedom of Information Act requests. So that was a lie. The guy should maybe, if they're going to cart in Trump for hush money payments or whatever, they should be, and they cart in politicians all the time for obstruction of justice or lying under oath. Well, this would be lying under oath. So Anthony Fauci should be charged. Okay, let's move on to the allegations. So Fauci's asked, how has this affected your life? And all these Republicans are out to get you. They're making you the evil bad guy. How is this affecting your life? Fauci, watch this.
Allegations by my Republican colleagues, amplified in the media, have led to real, tangible consequences for Dr. Fauci in his personal life in a way that should be unacceptable to all Americans. Dr. Fauci, you and I have known each other for a long time, and I'm not even going to admit how long. But during that time, I've seen your commitment not just to science, but to advancing the greater good. And I know that this isn't a topic you enjoy discussing, and I'm sorry I'm going to have to ask you about it. But I think the American people need to know what we are doing to those who are serving the common good and public health. I think it's important to make clear the harms that you and your loved ones have suffered because of these deeply irresponsible accusations. Because you know what? You're human, just like the rest of us. So, Dr. Fauci, can you please share with us the nature of the threats you have received since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yes, Fauci, please tell us how the pandemic and people asking you to be accountable and follow the science. Please tell us how this has affected your personal life. Never mind all the peons out there whose lives you ruined through your guiding through the pandemic. Never mind all the jobs that were lost or the kids that couldn't go to school or the people that were injured because they were mandated to take the vaccine. Never mind all of those people who lost relationships or loved ones. They were accused of being murderers. Never mind all of them, Fauci. It's all about you. How did this affect you?
Yes, there have been everything from harassments by emails, texts, letters, of myself, my wife, my 3 daughters. There have been credible death threats leading to the arrests of 2 individuals, and credible death threats mean someone who clearly was on their way to kill me. And it's required my having protective services essentially all the time. It is very troublesome to me. It is much more troublesome because they've involved my wife and my 3 daughters.
At these moments, how do you feel? Keep your mic on.
Terrible.
Do you continue to receive threats today?
Yes, I do. Every time someone gets up and says I'm responsible for the death of people throughout the world, the death threats go up.
Oh, cry me a river. Oh, you're responsible for never mind the fact that you told everybody else the misinformation spreaders, the anti-vaxxers, that they were responsible for millions of deaths around the world. Oh, but when it happens to you, poor you, Anthony Fauci, I feel really bad for you.
It's unacceptable that you've been treated this way, especially after you've dedicated your life to science and research for the public interest.
Oh,
You
gosh.
deserve better. Every human being deserves better. And I'm afraid that the treatment you've received will also have far-reaching consequences for the future of science, particularly when done for the public good.
I can't even with this. I cannot even with this. After they accuse the rest of us of murdering grandma and being misinformation spreaders. Poor Fauci, for him to be dragged through the mud. All he was trying to do was just live his life. No, the rest of us were trying to live our lives. Fauci was in charge, so he deserves it. He deserves people scrutinizing when he ruined literally billions of lives around the world. All right, so Fauci addresses, he brings up on his own the fact that he said, I am the science. Let's see what he has to say for himself about being the science.
And if I could just take this opportunity, when I was saying that if you attack me, you attack science, I didn't mean that I am science. What I meant was that when the data showed that hydroxychloroquine does not work, and there are people saying, oh, it does, I'll give it to people, and we know it can be hurtful to them, then when you're attacking what I'm saying, that the science shows it doesn't work, and the science shows that bleach doesn't work, that when you attack that, you really are attacking science, because science has shown that it doesn't work. That's what I meant when you're attacking me, you're attacking science.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Mr.
Oh,
Chairman.
right. Because Fauci's the only one who actually was talking about the science. He's the only one that actually knew what the science was. So anything that came out of Fauci's mouth was the science. So if you attack Fauci, you're attacking the science because he knows all the science. He's right about all the science. And so why would you attack somebody who's right about everything? He's right about all this. He's a walking encyclopedia. He knows all this. He knows all the science. And yet here we know that he didn't know any of the science. Earlier on in the hearing, he was saying, well, early on we believed this, but then we found out this. And yet you still spewed all the things you spewed. And then you said, if we attacked you, we were attacking the science when you were no longer yourself following the science. I mean, it's just totally unbelievable. Fauci, I think, rather than being like Anders Tegnell from Sweden, the epidemiologist who was leading the COVID pandemic response in Sweden, he took a lot of crap. Anders Tegnell stood up for what was really science, and he took the beatings, he took the heat, but he stood strong in the face of science. As alongside 300 of his colleagues who he was working with, who also were following his lead. He was leading by example, and they all stood strong in the face of science. They had a lot of politicians wanting to lock down, like the United States. They had a lot of politicians that were fear-based, wanting fear-based response. And the Swedish epidemiological team said, no, we are standing up for actual science, and we're only going to do what the science says. They weren't looking for glory and Vanity Fair covers and being treated like a hero and having people paint your picture and, make you into this godlike. That's Fauci got caught up in that. Fauci got really caught up in that. He wanted to throw the first pitch at the baseball game. He wanted the magazine covers. He wanted the invites to the parties. That's what he wanted, rather than actual scientists who stood up and stood strong in the face of a lot of fear, huge waves of fear coming from the population, wanting something to be done rather than, guys, you can't outrun a virus. It's a virus. We can't see it. There's not much we can really do, unfortunately. Fauci instead took the fame road, and that is where he's criminal. It would be one thing if there were no other examples of real scientists who stood strong, but we have numerous examples of scientists who stood strong. We have not only the Swedish epidemiological team, but we also have many American doctors, Dr. Pierre Corey, Dr. Peter McCullough. We had Dr. Ryan Cole. We had numerous, I can't even begin to start naming all of them, but we had numerous doctors who actually stood strong, and those doctors were demonized. They lost their jobs. They were called misinformation spreaders, conspiracy theorists, and yet they were the ones who were actually right. So it would be one thing if no one else knew anything. It would be wrong for us to be demonizing Fauci, but so many stood strong. So many were brave, and Fauci just wasn't one of them. And he needs to be held accountable for being not just one who wasn't brave and who didn't stand up. There were a lot who also stood right behind Fauci and said, okay, we'll just fear-based policies, fear-based reaction. But Fauci was in charge. And he was not only in charge, but he was the highest paid person in government. He was taking our money. And he wasn't working on behalf of the people. He's working on behalf of his own ego. And that's one of the crimes, but that's a moral crime. That's an ethical and moral crime. But I think he actually committed real crimes. And I think those crimes were showcased in this hearing when he lied about certain things, such as being open-minded to the lab leak and not using his personal email. These are things that, these members of Congress tend to get really petty. In my opinion, they get really petty and they start going after people that they're just trying to take down for things like lying to Congress. So I think that they should be going after Fauci. Personally, that's what they absolutely need to do. Lock them up. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen show, which you could catch just by heading to that link down below, KimIversonShow.com. You can watch the full show from what you just watched, or you could catch the full show live Monday through Friday, live streams, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. See you then. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Never miss an episode. Never miss a clip. Never miss a segment. Thanks, guys.